we're all unique. So just like in the fitness industry, there is no one best exercise for back pain, or there's no one best exercise for glutes. When it comes to behavior change, there's no one best approach. But what you do need to do is to make sure you know your client. And that is the same if you're a club operator. You need to know your team, you need to know your staff, and you need to be able to listen to what they might not be saying with their words. So that's what we're going to be introducing today. And the super interesting thing about last time is we had a psychologist in the house. We also had someone who works with mental health. And so what that brought up was some different techniques that we can use in order to help behavior change. And one of those things was motivational interviewing. I wanted to start there because there's a couple of things within scope of practice. If we're talking personal trainers, if somebody needs a therapist, that's not our job. We need to refer out. For therapy, motivational interviewing is an excellent technique, because what you can do is ask and use open-ended questions to see how ready somebody is to let's give up alcohol or drugs. However, what the research tells us is that if it comes to making better choices around food, it's not so useful. With those people that are struggling with fibromyalgia, it's the one thing that they're told absolutely do not use, because those people that follow a motivational interviewing process actually ended up putting on more weight. It's really important that we think, right, where are we doing this behavior change? And so if it's in the gym, we might want to look at some different options. If you find out that your client is struggling with mental health, refer them out. If you find out that your client needs a psychotherapist, refer out. Stay in our lane. And that is exactly the same if you run the gym. If you're a gym manager or an operator, you need to be able to support your staff with what they need. So that brings us, well, how do we get to what they need? Now, if you're a personal trainer, we have a bias. I know that sounds awful, doesn't it? But we do. Do you know what your bias is? So I was having a little look. Karen kind of went, Jeff did a little like this, and Bob came into the camera. I think Bob's on it. I think he's like, there is a little intrigue into what this, but it's exercise. Come on, we all know we want the answer to be exercise and movement. Sometimes it isn't, and that's part of the puzzle. As a personal trainer, our goal, if you like, our agenda is to try and find out what is meaningful to the client and where their goal comes from. And then we want to try and think, how can we create actions or nudge them towards the thing that's going to help them move more? Most of us want people to move more because, let's face it, unless you find yourself in a hotel room trying to inject an intravenous drip of new blood, you probably need to move more. But if you are cheating in the Tour de France in a hotel room with a blood transfusion, you probably would be all right if you moved a little bit less. But 40% of Americans and British, but it was just the study was done on Americans, don't even reach the daily recommendation for exercise. 40%, that's massive. That's just our very basic movement criteria, which is 150 minutes to 300 minutes of cardiovascular exercise for our strength training. So that would be 3 times a week. So I've just had 3 people come in. So if I sounded a little bit distracted there. For many personal trainers, many people in the fitness industry, we want to try and help our clients get to that goal of moving. Here's the kicker. Everybody knows that we need to move more for health, longevity, for reduced inflammation, for reduced risk of heart disease, all of those wonderful things, but they're long-term movement goals. And to make long-term movement goals, it's very difficult for us as humans because we are hardwired for dopamine and to look after that short-term impulse. And so that's where we might be going, right, I know that I need to move more, but that donut looks really good. I know I need to move more, but you know what? I'd rather go out with my friend now. Or it could be that you're fighting, I'd really like to go to the gym and move more, but I haven't been home for 4 days in a row because work has been so busy and I really want to go home and see my wife. So it might not be that you're not motivated, as some people might say, but maybe you're more motivated to go and see your family. And as personal trainers, we have to navigate what's important to that client. And this is fourfold if you are a club owner or manager. Because if you don't know what makes your team tick, what they want in their workspace, and you don't listen to what their goals are, they're going to either, one, leave, and that's going to cost you more money to replace them, or they're not going to offer value to your clients. And so it's important. The first thing we need to do is find out what our client's goal is and what they want. And we touched on that last week. Today, I wanted to look at listening, but not to what people say with their words anyway. And a big, massive thank you to those of you that have got your screens on, because this makes this super easy. And what I'm already doing is looking around at those screens and seeing who's touching their face, who's wriggling, who's got their feet directed towards the door. And what does that tell me? Because it's not in what people say that we learn what they want, it's in what they do and how their body. Yes, don't worry, Orla, that's absolutely fine. Orla's driving. Yeah, please don't look at the screen, and I'm not going to judge there. But she was compelled to come in, so that told me a lot about that. And this is because when we're talking to anybody, so this isn't going to be just useful if you run a gym, you run your own studio, or you train clients. This is useful in life. This is useful when my son comes in and he looks a bit shifty because I know he's up to something or he's done something. Or when someone wants to steal a cookie from the cookie jar and they do it quite openly, but they're going in and it's their body that's telling us everything that they're up to something. And we need to be able to switch into this. But there isn't a personal training course that teaches deep listening. Well, there is. It's Faster Health and Fitness, and it's in our module on motor skill application specialist. It starts at module 3 and goes into module 4. Deep listening is really tough because what we're looking at is when you're communicating with your client and you're asking them what's important to them, what do they want. First thing is, most of us lie. We do, because if we're in a situation where we're being interviewed or asked questions, most of us will want to give the answer that we think will help or will be what is expected of us because we want to connect. Particularly if someone has plucked up the courage to come into a gym and get a personal training session and you say, oh, so, what brings you here today? Why did you suddenly want to have a personal training session? If they're a young mum who just wants to speak to someone who's not going to just go back at them, they're not wanting to say, I was just a bit lonely, or I'm actually sick and tired of just being with my baby. That isn't what it's expected. What they might start to say is, I just want to lose a bit of weight. And that would seem right. But if we notice that they go, I just want to lose a bit of weight, that's interesting. They just touch their neck. If they say they just want to lose weight, but their feet change position, or their breath starts to change, or they start to speed up, or they start to change the tone of their voice, that's where I'm going, that's interesting. Now, I'm not saying we start judging people and go, oh, they're definitely lying. They touched their neck, or they started to see all of these pacifying things that we do. But it does tell me that I think it's supposed to be the limbic brain, but who knows? That is a tell. By the way, I might have to ask Karen on this later because she's our professional poker player. So these are the things that you're looking for at the gambling table. Is somebody starting to touch their neck? Is their rhythm changing? We all know that a posture assessment is really useful, but not for actually predicting an injury, but for telling us how our client feels, what mood they're in, what's affecting them. And some of you may know, but I was a professional actress for a long time. And one of the things that we had to do was obviously learn lines, and we had to listen. And what I learned was that listening isn't that easy. And yet we never give it that time to just go, oh, can I practice and hone in on these listening skills? It taught me that if I had to learn a whole play and I was just there hearing the words, waiting to speak my line, the communication between me and the other actor was missing. And that's the same when we're talking to our client. If we're just reading off a script or we're paraphrasing what they say because we've been taught it on a strict criteria of questions, we might miss those subtleties in the change of voice, the change of tempo, the shape. When you're on Zoom, we're going to be looking at where someone is in relationship to the camera. When we're in a room with someone, we actually have this kinesthetic response, and we'll find that our body language starts to mimic. And I learned as an actress very quickly that the best way to learn my lines was be present. Because if I was present, what would happen is I would be listening to my actor and I would be seeing when they had an emotional, and that would tell me exactly what my character should say or do in response. But if I wasn't present and I wasn't listening to those body language shifts, I would miss that. And what this really brings us down to is everything we talked about before in creating a behavior change. It's the same as creating a movement behavior. We need to find out what's important to that person, and we need to try and find out why that's important. On Motor Skill Application Specialists, we call this the why, so. And just in case you haven't been through the whole process, it is not as brutal as just say so. You always have to earn your right to ask your clients questions and know when to stop. So never actually stops with a client, because you're always finding out what's meaningful to them. But the journey is about a discovery. So every time you train a client, every time you're talking to a member of staff, think about, what can I learn today that I didn't know about this person? And as you talk to your client, and you may discover they start off saying, oh, I just want to lose weight. And that might be your time to ask an open-ended question. What would you be doing if weight wasn't an issue? Oh, well, I can do everything I want to do. Oh, so weight's not such a big problem then. And in the case of the mum that wants to come because her crying baby, that's absolutely right, because that's not her reason for being there. But it might be, well, I won't be able to go to the wedding, or my husband has moved to a separate bedroom. Now, this is a very different thing. This isn't just about weight loss. This is now about an emotional connection with her husband. And that program looks very different. What we're trying to do is we're trying to find out what the goal is. And bearing in mind, they might not know, or they might think they know what that goal is. But it's that moment when you say, so have you ever been the weight that you would like to be? Yes, I was 21. And were you happy then? No. So, well, then that's not about the weight. That's about the connection to the body. And so, again, that makes it a very different program and a very, very different experience. But sometimes it isn't the words, it's the fact that you said, were you happy with your body then? And they go, but their body told me no, they weren't, because they shifted, they wriggled, they changed their breath, they changed their tone of speech. And it was that that told me, oh, we need to go a little bit deeper in here. And as you start to draw out this information layer by layer, what you're uncovering, what you're discovering is not just why that goal is important, the carrot of what they get out of it. What you find out is the stick, the real kicker. The moment someone says, oh, I just want to wear this dress to be able to go to a wedding, or I've got this suit for a wedding, and will you be able to go to the wedding if you don't lose the weight? Well, and if they say no, then get different friends, right? Because that's not a wedding we want to go to. No one's been stopped ever. But if it comes down to, so what if you don't ever lose this weight? What then? It's at that point that you might get that completely still body. And the still body tells me that that person has had an emotional reaction and they can freeze, flee, or fight. So it tells me I need to pursue that little bit further. And this is where we might find, well, my mum died of a heart attack. And now that is what we call the stick. So now we've got the carrot that is the cookie to the motivation. That's it. We're going to put lots of these trail crumbs for the carrot. But the one that's going to help someone to put in strategies to keep going to that gym, to keep doing the behaviors that they need to do to make that change, are the ones that are connected to the stick. And that's why we earn that right. We don't just bash someone into submission on it. Last night, my husband was on a call with his work, and in the background, I heard the MD going, so we just need to find out what your goals are. And he asked everybody, did they have any goals? But what he hadn't done was created this safe space. So what everybody did was start with goals that he wanted to hear, or they thought he wanted to hear. And this is where, if we don't take the time to really notice our clients change, or create that safe space for them to share with us why they haven't already achieved a goal, or what makes a goal important to them, then we're going to be making it much harder. From here, if we've started to spot every time a member of staff or every time a client has that emotional reaction, we've now got strategies and points that we can connect emotionally to how they felt, because we saw it. We saw the body change. We saw the things that they were trying to hide. There's a great book, I think it's called Body of What's Your Body Saying? And it's Joe Novardo. And he worked for the police force and he interviewed people. And he talks about how he was an immigrant in America. And when he first arrived, he didn't speak the language. And so what he had to do was look at people's facial expressions to find out, are they friend or foe? So did they raise their eyebrows and then they were felt welcomed, or did they sort of growl or scrunt? And then he knew that that was more of a dangerous scenario. And so he started to look at behavior. And it's a fascinating book. Women, we tend to do this when we're feeling a little bit uncomfortable or lying. But before you start judging your partner, it's context driven, which is why we need to get to know our client or our team to know when they are uncomfortable. But it is a tell. If someone starts to touch their face, men start to do the back of their neck, and that's again a pacifier, a sign that they're uncomfortable, or the absolute freeze. And this is where it's really useful to look at somebody's feet, because in that case, very often they're towards the door. Now we've got these strategies of asking questions, going through and spotting when someone is had that emotional, I call it that what moment. And it's something that we work on in improv as well, where two people get on a scene together and we talk and we say things until one person is got at. And the got at is you'll see the chemistry between two people, and then something will happen. Something, either they said a different word, or they just, something triggered them, and their whole body has this reaction. And as a player of improv, you then suddenly go, oh, new beat. All right, this is something I need to pursue. And it's the same when we're talking to a client. If we see that emotional trigger get them, we know we're onto something. We know that's where that deeper thought lies, and we go for it. And in improv, my teacher would be like, get on that, go, 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 and don't stop. Because the deeper you get, that's when you get to that, that's when you get to that intrinsic driver. So putting this into practical use, if you miss these things and you are talking to your staff and you're going, how's it going? What are those things that are going really well in the gym or the studio? If they give you that surface response, then we need to dig in a little bit closer. It might be, what can I do to help you within work at the moment to make your job better? And that could be some practical tips of, well, I would just like it if we started half an hour later. That's not going to happen. So how can I make it that you feel valued? Because if we start to notice that our team doesn't feel valued, then they're not going to be giving everything they can to the gym. And with that, we need to make sure that, well, maybe we add some sort of community value to the gym. We maybe have a social evening, a time where we can go, well, what would you like to bring to this facility? And by doing that, you create autonomy over new projects, over new ideas. Well, I think it'd be great if we could have a new dance class. I've met this guy, Jeff, and he's brilliant at dancing and Latino. I think it'd be really good. And if you see that person's getting animated and excited, then you can give them that opportunity to set it up. Well, let's put it on. Let's do that as a trial period. That way, your staff are going to feel valid. They're going to want to go the extra mile for you. When it comes to personal training, I'm going to open this up to everybody. But our key is, if it's not a movement goal that we've got to, it's not our job. That's our goal, is to get to the movement goal. They're going to have hurdles in the way. That hurdle might be weight, which might mean, what are we doing to help that? Are you seeing a dietitian to help you with food choices? You might want to know if they're on any form of medication, in which case you would then go to the research to make sure you're doing the right thing, meeting your client where they are. But what we really want to know is, what do they love? What was their experience of exercise when they were at school? What was their favorite form of exercise movement? What made them feel great? What made them feel part of a community? What did they hate? What were the bad experiences that they've had? What were the things that made it so difficult to have not come into the gym before now, or get a personal trainer before now? What were the exercises that remind them of something else? So the other day I was doing, I had a client and she was doing a skater, and she was I noticed that on her face, she wasn't quite into it. And I just said to her, this is like hockey. And the moment I said the word hockey, her whole posture changed and she just dropped into that movement. And that was her connection to that movement. And how can we find more of these moments? And what we've really done is we've highlighted things that we go into much deeper on motor skill. We don't have time for that today, but that is everything around us the whole time. Our body is judging and it's saying, what's the temperature like in here? Has someone done a toxic smell? I'm looking at my dog. She's not at the moment. So we're getting all this information. And when information becomes important, it crosses a threshold and it goes poof. And that's the moment that if you say something to your client and it creates that what moment where their body moves, their tempo changes, their shape changes, their posture changes. If that happens, what you've witnessed is an emotion. And with that emotion, you get a chemical reaction, you get a muscle contraction, and you've got about 6 seconds before cognition kicks in. And cognition will be going through that whole check process. Has this ever happened to me before? Did I exercise before? What was that experience? Was hockey fun? Did I enjoy getting knocked over in rugby? Did I enjoy getting my arm broken and my leg broken? Those both happened, by the way, in netball and horse riding. Hell, breaking a bone's not that bad. It was good fun. It reminded me of that experience. But all this is happening super quickly. And on that checklist, you take an action. And that's where the action is either I move towards the thing because that's a good looking donut, or that is a very good looking person and it's Valentine's Day, so I want that date, or it's freeze, flight, or fright. And those things are essential because a feeling is what pain is. A feeling is fatigue. A feeling is what is essential to manage for performance. All of the key things that we need to be delivering in a session. But what's even more magical, we get to interfere with the action. And if we are the person that's creating a fear to the cognition, we can make pain worse. If we're creating a fear to the cognition, we can make someone feel more fatigued. If we're creating fear, we can be part of stopping someone doing the very thing that they've come in to do, which is move. But what we can do is help reassess those actions and make it into an opportunity. So you need to have listened to hear and heard your client say, well, last time I went to a gym, I hurt my knee. Did it hurt? It hurt when I was doing lunges with a kettlebell. So I've now got a story and I now need to know in my training session, I want to make that person feel safe. I might want to offer them a movement that gives them success, that doesn't have the kettlebell, but reinforces they were able to do the movement and then reintroduce the kettlebell, because we want to reinforce and reintroduce those positive movement behaviors and those positive behaviors. But what we're doing is nudging. So it's always looking at the you can do. Here is the big thing. If you don't notice when your client swallows, when their breath changes, you'll miss when they've had an emotion. And that is the key to creating an emotionally connected experience, whether that's a personal training session or whether that's the experience from the moment someone walks through the door to your club, whether it's the moment they walk into the studio or the gym. We need to know the client that likes music, the client that doesn't like music, the client that likes to work out in a quiet space, the client that gets inspired by seeing other people moving. We need to know the client that likes to chat or have a word with the receptionist on the way out. And all of this is not from the words that people say, but it's from those non-verbal cues. So If anybody's got anything to add, or if you've got any questions, I would love to hear those. There's quite a lot to take in, particularly if you haven't been through motor skill yet. Go for it, Bob.
Not trying to be pushy. I'm just in the background, but as I'm listening to you go through the concept, the biggest takeaway so far is that yes, we have an objective to understand not so much the client per se, but customers in general. The biggest challenge I see is that we need to understand ourselves first before we understand anybody else. That's the biggest weakness. Depending on what generation we came from, those of us who are, and I'm probably the oldest one here, we were raised a different way than Gen Z. So there were things that we were raised with somewhat corporal punishment wise. Those of us that old who were abused by their parents and grandparents made us become much more aware of ourselves and how we interact with and show respect to other people. We were raised that way. So as we start looking at how we interface with folks, how we were raised comes to play right away. So we know what we have to do. We have to know how to read people. We have to know how to understand the spoken and the unspoken, which is really covered well by you, which is fantastic. We never learned that. So we need to go back and say, okay, how do we respond to certain stimuli? How do we respond to emotional triggers? Once we better understand ourselves, we're in a better position to understand other people, and other people come from different generations, which makes it even more critical for us to understand that because the triggers are all different. So someone who's a customer of mine that is Gen Z is going to respond differently than someone who is my age. So we have to be flexible enough to understand those sensitive challenges in front of us.
I think that's some really good points there in getting to know each other, which is part of why in drama school they try to what they call break you because you emotionally you need to sorry, I just had a little hand up there. I think that's it. So yeah, try and emotionally break you so that you can notice those things. I will come straight back to you. But the interesting thing about a lot of the tells is they have gone back decades, years and years and years. So even whichever period of time, we all learn to lie here, which is why the face isn't such a great tell. Because Christmas, I love these socks. They're amazing. You learn to say that very well. But what you'll find happens is either somebody starts to cover their face or they tap their foot. Or one of the things I look for is, as a movement coach, if somebody starts to tap their foot, what I'm seeing, I've seen their shoulder move. Okay, so you can start to see those different movements, and anything that is different from what it was before is where you start to look at. Does that make sense, Bob? Does that help? So that you're looking for something that changed. And if they were very still and then suddenly they start to move, oh, that was something. So now I might think, right, this is where I want to pursue my questions because something emotionally happened there. I would like to set you all a little sort of challenge, and that is one, think about yourself when you notice you've had an emotional reaction. I will get a trigger if I see a spider. I will get triggered by lots. And when I say trigger in this respect, I don't mean a bad trigger necessarily, just information that changes my emotion. One of the really simple things, smiling at someone, telling someone that their hair looks nice, watch their reaction. Start to really hone in on those small cues. Jeff, you had a question. Got your hand up.
Not really a question, just from my side, we're like working for a long time with the group exercise and starting knowing my people, yeah, behaviors and all this kind of stuff. And sometimes when a new customer is coming and she approaches to me and I say, I knew, can you try to take it easy with me and all this kind of thing. Is it, what I say to the people in that one is just take it easy. Yeah. Try to survive. Try to have a look at the people over there in the front, what they are already more experienced, and follow them and try to have fun. Yeah. Panic. Yeah. The funny thing is, like, long time ago, something in my mind that was saying to me, just the way what that person walk into my studio, I know how good or bad can be. But it's rare I felt like a troublemaker. Yeah. If someone who like really wants to do it, I can read the energies. Yeah. Many times I felt read people like that. But this is like what I can share to you. Like reading all my community. This morning I play a music. Yeah. They immediately they look at me like no. They like especially one track. Yeah. I has been playing that track for 2 years. Yeah. They love that music. And later I put that music and everybody, these ladies are starting, ooh, everybody happy. So I don't mind. Let's put it on. Yeah. But I always want to share.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And what you were tapping into there is really the next step on motor skill, which really takes you down further to the rabbit hole, is that when you start to, the first step is being aware that someone's had a trigger and seeing that emotion. The next step is knowing that you can influence it. And that's the point where we're actually using story. And we all know that we've been to see a film that we've just come out and gone, that was brilliant. And then the first thing you do is have to go and tell your friends you've got to go and see that film. And the worst thing is, as an actress and seeing lots of film scripts, you realize they're all on a formula. And it's not by accident that you go in and the world's like this, and then something happens and it all goes wrong, and then this whole debate, and then the ending. And now I can almost watch a film, and from the opening scene, I can tell my husband what's going to happen at the end. So he hates going to the cinema with me because of that. I have to try and be quiet. But the point is, if you know that that track gets your clients to smile and dance, the next step is how can you play with where you give them that track? Because the track is the little reward, it's the nudge. But if you always play it in the same place, it becomes expected. If it's always played in the same place, then it may lose its power. But what we can do is, this track could be the exercise. Do you love burpees? And the person goes, I really love burpees. You go, yeah, they do. But the person who said yeah, fine with a burpee, they are not fine with a burpee. But they didn't leave. So maybe they're kind of fine with a burpee. But the point is, if we can create emotional beats that allow someone to feel safe, that challenges someone, but then plays with this, I feel threatened, I don't. I feel amazing, I feel threatened. I feel amazing, this is brilliant. This is really rubbish. This trainer is amazing, I hate her. She's so kind, she's nasty. And then we get to play. That's when you've really mastered not only seeing that someone's been triggered and knowing that they've got an emotion, but how you can start to interplay that in your training session, or whether that's creating the experience as somebody walks through the gym. What story are you telling them by walking through the gym? What story is each member of your staff playing part of? And I would say as well, if you do have a client that is struggling with making behavior change that they need, start really small. And that was something that we looked at last week. For example, if it is just judging everyone by my own lowly standards, how good cheese looks at about 8:30 at night. But if I don't buy cheese, I have to be really motivated to walk to the shop to buy the cheese to come back. And the hope is that by nudging myself in not having the cheese in the fridge, I might think, I'm not going to go and get the cheese. So having lots of different strategies that help you lead to the change that you want. So these little strategies become a ritual. So you have your trainers by the door, so you know that as you leave the door, you're going to put your trainers on to go for a walk. Those sorts of things. And that's the same. Any other questions or anything you would like to add, experiences? Bob.
So because of my Group X background, I have a subtle, devious, sneaking technique I use. When I have someone that's really having a problem trying to get to the next goal, whether it's caused by them, partners back home, maybe something at work, I try to connect them up with other people in my universe, whether they're my students or my clients. I try to bring common folks together with common issues and challenges and let them start to network and support each other. Then my role becomes one of the facilitator. I just stimulate the conversation, back away, let nature take its course, or I may keep on stimulating that relationship so they both win. And what I found is that when I do it the right way, and of course there's some problems, some challenges, but when it works, so I just take off and they just go about their business happy and take care of their goals and objectives.
One of the things that I think that through lockdown, we saw the strength of group exercise, because it was the group exercise trainers that kept communities together, because it wasn't just about moving, it was turning up for each other. And those of you that are as my age, the gyms were places of community. It wasn't just leisure centres. Even the private health gyms, was always a party, a salsa class at the end of the day. And what's happened with social media, those types of things have changed, because people can be with their own community on the phone while they're in your premises. So what we have to do is then find new ways of reaching our community. And this is when, Karen, I know that you do things socially with your group, whether it's a Christmas party, whether it's a charity event, it's a competition, those sorts of things. And they are the glue that brings everybody together. It's just sometimes we have to think a little bit more laterally with that. I think most group exercise trainers now and personal trainers have WhatsApp groups with their members. When I first started, client would not expect you to contact them through the week. You see them the next session. Whereas now our clients expect you to contact them on WhatsApp. But what you can do is have a group where, like you said, Bob, you're not the one who's just contacting them all the time. They've got each other. I've got this girl that I met through TikTok, and she's like, oh, you get a real spark. She's an absolute gem. She's joined our group and she's just brought new energy. And she'll put in little videos of her doing my workout by her kitchen sink and all of those sorts of things. And she's putting in different recipes and all that sort of stuff. And it's the group talking to each other where, like you said, Bob, you facilitated that, but you don't have to be there the whole time. So finding ways that people can help nudge each other is absolutely brilliant. Community. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time. And I am aware that some of you may have Valentine dates to run off to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just stop the recording now. And if you do have to go, that's absolutely fine. But if you have got 5 minutes and want to stay, then you can.